Hello and welcome to the second episode of TT Coaching's podcast. I am here with myself. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about stuff, and the stuff I'm going to talk to you about is largely centered around ADHD and what we're doing here at TT Coaching. And I'm going to do a little rundown of the news stories that are affecting the neurodiverse community currently, which are quite interesting. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about future episodes, guests I'm going to be getting on, and generally what the future holds. So hold tight. So here we are, and I am here. I'm actually in I'll do some video later, but I am in my man cave, or the family fun cave as we call it, which is really nice. I've got my old professional podcasty set up, and I want to talk to you today about a number of things, but primarily I want to talk to you about what's been going on in the ADHD world. But before I do that, I need to talk to you about an incident that occurred today. Now, I go to the gym quite regularly. I've been trying to lose weight and have lost 3 stone recently. I have quit drinking alcoholic beverages, which has a distinct and wonderful effect on my brain and makes me feel much happier and makes me far more regulated, but more of that later. I was in the gym. I had finished my workout. Since I've stopped drinking, for some reason I feel less compelled to do such long and heavy workouts. I used to do like over an hour of cardio, but now I'm kind of just doing 40 minutes. I'm pretty sweaty and gross by the end of the 40 minutes of cardio, and so I'm kind of just coming off now and going into the sauna and the jacuzzi and living my best life in there. So that's interesting, isn't it? Like that I don't feel this mental pressure. I think I'm going more regularly, but I'm not going as hard. So I don't know really what that's down to, but that is quite an interesting observation. But I had finished my workout, and another gentleman who had also finished his workout was getting changed opposite me, and he sounds like the start of a certain type of book, doesn't it? But it's not. So he was there and he sneezed, and I said bless you, and he said thank you, and like I could tell by the tone of his voice that he was very touched by this. Sounds bizarre, but when you have ADHD, you can kind of insightfully infer what that person is kind of feeling. And I could tell that he was surprised that I had said bless you, because I didn't really know him and because it was kind of above and beyond what the usual kind of, etiquette is in that situation. But I felt compelled to, because no one likes having a cold, really, do they? So I said that, and then I could see that he was looking for something else to kind of start a conversation about with me. So I was kind of there just getting changed, and he said, have you heard the news? And I said, what news is this? And he said, we're about to go to war. And I said, oh, because I don't tend to get myself involved hugely in what is going on in the realm of world politics. And the reason for that is because I have done quite a lot of work and research, see my self-help books under the name of Trevor Warman, to learn about the world and the realm and what's going on. And for me, I feel that a lot of news, if you can call it that, is designed to create certain feelings of fear, uncertainty, unpleasantness in a human being's mind. And the reason why that occurs is probably for a different type of podcast. But I don't tend to watch it. I don't tend to pay much attention to the news. So I was a bit like, oh, really? Thinking, oh, my gosh, I don't want to know. But he told me that Vladimir Putin is apparently causing a war or something, and it's all going to go off. And then he went on to talk about how all we want to do is protect our families and so on. And I had to agree with him there, yeah. And I sort of tried to suggest to him that maybe not to worry about it too much. I mean, famous last words, we might actually go to one and egg will be on my face, won't it? But I was a bit like, I don't really want to know, because I do kind of protect myself from information that A, is extraneous, and B, is going to cause me to be unsettled and to potentially cause any form of dysregulation. I'm perfectly capable of dysregulating myself without the help of BBC News. So it was interesting. We kind of laughed it off and sort of, had a few comments about it. And then I left and it was all very pleasant on the surface. But it made me realise that no matter how much you try and control your environment to ensure that your mind is clear and pure, you can't necessarily help it, and the guy was from somewhere else in the world. I don't know whether that meant, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't feel like English people necessarily would have had that conversation, but we did. And I felt, fine, but it made me, like I say, realise that the importance of the mind. And that's one thing I want to get across today, is that what I've learnt through being an ADHD coach and gaining my qualifications and so on is that the mind doesn't, people think that the mind controls them, that they are, we are bound by the mind and that we need to do what it tells us. But my belief, having done quite a lot of research into this kind of stuff, is that we can control the mind. And we do this by feeding the mind positive thoughts, positive ideas. That's not to say we should be ignorant of what is going on in the world, but it is to say that perhaps we need to protect ourselves from information that's not necessarily relevant or important. And I am the type of person who has very much spent, hours sifting through various conspiracy theories, learning about some of the atrocious things that occur in the world. So I'm a fine one to talk. But as I get older and my mind becomes clearer, the alcohol dissipates from my system, I feel like it is very important to kind of keep everything as pure as possible and to not burden yourself with information and news that A, may not ever come to fruition, and B, doesn't concern you. And the amount of times, due to my ADHD, I've waded into battles for other people on the premise that it's the just and moral thing to do. And I remember working in Virgin Megastores and basically quitting my job on the premise that all of the other staff were unhappy. And so everyone sort of applauded as I left. And I walked out of the shop into Blue Water and kind of thought, yeah, I haven't got a job now. And everyone else who's urged me and egged me on to do that have. So that was silly. And this is the kind of thing that we can tend to do. We overcompensate and don't necessarily have the same filters that neurotypical people do. Because of that, we suffer. We can suffer quite a great deal. So, an interesting interlude this morning on an otherwise very peaceful and tranquil day where I have primarily been creating content, which is something that I never really thought I'd say. But I have done some of that sort of stuff today and I have kind of enjoyed it. With regards to what's coming up on this podcast, I am very excited to tell you that the quite wonderful Katrina Marie Hilden of Zinzino fame will be coming on the podcast next week, talking about her life, a little bit about where she's come from, the sort of, crises and traumas that maybe she's had to contend with, and how she's got to where she is now, which is a state of what seems to be happiness, joy, bliss, without obviously the general issues of the day-to-day life that we all have to deal with. Katrina is successful, happy, and doing her thing, which not a lot of people in the world can actually say. So she's someone that I am very fond of because of the synergy between what's going on with her brand and mine. But more importantly, there's an energy to kind of wanting to improve people's lives and make things better. And I think we share that. And so that's something we're going to be discussing and talking about. We're going to be talking about her ADHD diagnosis that she did with TT Coaching. And we're going to be talking about, hopefully, my Zinzino results, which will have come through as well. Because I've been trying her Zinzino products. And quite frankly, I think they're good. It's early days, but with regards to quitting drinking, for instance, I have felt very, very few cravings or desires to go and have a beer or a glass of wine, which I have to say is rare. So long may that continue, because as we know, the link between ADHD and alcohol is really quite significant and can have incredibly negative repercussions on the ADHD. But that's something I'm going to put out in a short sometime this week. So, stay tuned for that. So we've got Katrina, and I dare say that we're going to have some other interesting people in the sphere. I will almost certainly roll out my good pals George Barnard and Philip Henry, who will inevitably come on and discuss life's situations and probably talk a little bit about what a nightmare I am to be friends with and work with, I suppose. So that is all exciting and to look forward to. Briefly, I would also like to look at ADHD news. So the weekend news was quite interesting because all of the headlines from the weekend were to do with the long ADHD waiting lists. And some of these headlines are quite funny because they say, oh, yeah, like 2-year waiting lists. It's really unacceptable. The NHS have failed us. They've failed us with their 2-year waiting list. And I'm thinking, man, like it's much longer than that. I know we've got right to choose and stuff now, but the ADHD waiting lists can be much longer than 2 years. They certainly are in Kent, from my understanding. So that's not great, is it? But I struggle to see how that's really the NHS's fault, because if you think about the NHS, these people who work for the NHS, nurses, doctors, whatever, practitioners, clinicians, are good-hearted, kind people who've gone into jobs that are fundamentally to help others. And it really isn't their fault that funding and money and, whatever it is they need to get these jobs done are not there. We are blaming the individual for the collective's responsibility. And if we are continuously defunding things and we are continuously running down what the NHS, as it seems to be the case in kind of every area of the NHS, then what do we expect? We can't blame the NHS. We can't blame the individuals that are working their socks off and trying their hardest, often for very little pay. It's just not reasonable and it's not fair. But what it does highlight is the need for assessments, and that's something that obviously we offer at TT Coaching. And our assessments are done entirely in the same way that a formal medical assessment would be carried out. We have been trained, or I say we, the royal we, I have been trained by a company that obviously delivers these assessments in a medical format. They have applied all the same logic, characteristics, the DIVA 5 assessment, the NICE guidelines, the ASRS screening services, all that sort of stuff, and they ensure that we are robust in the way that we do it. So there is, in fact, no difference in the diagnosis. And, of course, our sister company that looks after the meds and all that sort of stuff can provide the meds at a cost to the individual when you have your private assessment with us. So if meds is what you're after, I mean, they're not going to be, I like to be quite transparent with these things, they're not going to be as cheap as if you were going via the NHS and that route, but they are available. But if you're not looking for medication and you are looking for extra support, like via access to work grants, like holistic support, how to manage your ADHD without formal, medication from the NHS and chemical medication, if you like, then that is something that we do excel at because we have vast experience. Because a large part of my time, knowing that I have had ADHD, I have been unmedicated and I have enjoyed being unmedicated. And part of my expertise, I guess, is that I like to learn about the new things that are out there. I like to understand about myself, and I like to know what are the kind of tools that I need to be able to cope with myself, then in turn cope with my beautiful, wonderful family, and then the wider world and so forth. So, the situation is what it is. We know what it is, and people need to really look at and think, why am I having this ADHD assessment? Is it because a lot of people want it for medication? Well, that's one thing. I would always advise people not to be getting a diagnosis just to get medication, because medication, as my doctor says to me, is not the answer. It's a tool potentially to help you with certain topics and certain projects and that sort of thing. And you need to get your own medical advice with regards to that, But if you are looking to educate yourself, to have more knowledge, to answer the questions, to kind of go, why do I have low self-esteem? Why do I struggle to be rejected by people? Why can't I hold down a job? Why are my relationships difficult? Why are these things happening to me? And you want to understand why, and then you want to kind of resolve that and make it better, and then essentially harness your neurodiversity or lack of it and ensure that you are getting the best out of your life, then that is something that we 100% and wholeheartedly suggest you get in touch with us about, because that is kind of what we do, and in addition to that, the things that we do are consultancy. We consult for individuals or families if they're having issues with schools, for their kids if they've got neurodiversity or in the process of being diagnosed. We can support you and help you through that. We provide education for individuals. We provide education for companies and businesses. We provide support and coaching in all areas and all facets of your life. We just want to make things better for the neurodiverse. That is fundamentally what TT coaching is all about. Here's an interesting one. Scientists apparently can work out what ADHD whether you've got ADHD, Scientists claim to have found a way to discover ADHD by looking at one body part. Now, this is the Daily Mail, so take that as you will. I love what they've done here because they've gone one body part, haven't they? So automatically you're thinking the nose, right? Do you know what I mean? So it's a clever bit of clickbait, which obviously the Daily Mail is, before I get sued, obviously not famous for. Obviously not. It's a very reputable online presence. But what it does do is it makes you think about what the body part is. But it's actually really not what you initially thought if you're a little rude boy like me. It is to do with the eye, apparently. So what does it say here? It says scientists have claimed in South Korea that characteristics of the back of your eye could link towards ADHD. Using an AI, imagine that, using an AI computer model to predict the condition, the specialist team analysed images of the retina in a study of 323 children. It found to have a 96% accuracy rate, revealing those with thicker blood vessels and smaller optic discs were all shown to be indicators. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about this, because part of me wonders whether this is just to do with pushing the AI agenda and how brilliant AI is. But also, there are some differences. Like the ADHD brain is shaped slightly different to a neurotypical person's brain. That's what I learned in a museum, I guess, in Holland. So I it's an interesting thing. But if it means that we can diagnose people easier and more effectively and more efficiently, then marvellous news, I guess. Another interesting article that I'll briefly talk about is a new drug The novel, what's it called? Here we go. Centanafadine is effective and clinically meaningful for adult ADHD. A phase 3 trials with a total of 859 adults. More patients who received it had at least an 18-point improvement at week 6 on the ADHD Investigator Symptom Rating Scale. Wow. So that's interesting because a lot of people, myself included, struggle with medication for a variety of reasons. But a lot of what's on the market, I think, isn't hugely or necessarily suitable to everybody. That said, there are a number of people who say it's life-changing and game-changing for them. So it swings and roundabouts. But to have something that resonates with all ADHDers, if people want to take those types of medications, is always a positive and good thing. So I guess really that wraps it up for this week. I just wanted to kind of check in and just talk a little bit about what's going to be happening, what's going to be going on. Like I say, I look forward to next week. We'll have Katrina on and we can talk about various bits and pieces, delve into her life a little bit and see what's been going on. And yes, until next week, be happy and see you in the future.